Nail Chronicle for my fruit and veggie nail stamping tutorial. So this tutorial will be focused on the reverse stamping technique, where I'll be using my stamping mat mostly for the design. You'll see me apply the images to my nails towards the end of the video. So I started out with adding a whole bunch of fruit and veg images to my stamping mat, and it looks like I've added a lot, and it's because I always add, or try to always add extra. Sometimes I don't, and this is just in case some of the images get damaged, or I'm a bit worried that it's not going to work out, and particularly with these more complex ones where I'm using multiple colors on the images. So the watermelon, for example, that I'm coloring in here, I colored it in red and with a little bit of green down the bottom, and it just adds that little bit extra risk to the image being damaged, so I take it on the safe side and create some extras. So I'm just using my dotting tools here, and I just put a sort of a blob on the end of the dotting tool and slowly dab it on, and try not to have too little nail polish. That's probably the key, and also not too much. It does take a little bit of practice. If you have too little, it has a tendency to drag the actual image itself and damage that, particularly with these ones where they've got some facial features. And if you have too much on there, then it can spill over and you just end up with a bit of a mess, which doesn't look the best. So have a bit of a practice, try it out, and just experiment with what technique works for you. And for the dotting tools, you can pretty much get them anywhere, like Amazon, eBay. If you just search for dotting tools, they generally come in packs of 5, or they might come with some other like nail brushes and things like that. And for me, they would be one of the best tools to get when you're starting out. They're relatively cheap, and they're just a really versatile tool and a really good one to start out with. So I've used them in a few Halloween designs to create some eyes and dots and things like that. Anyway, so here I'm filling in my peas, and I decided to go with the light green and a dark green, and similar to the watermelon, I wanted to create a bit of a realistic image. So it wasn't going to be the exact colors, but I don't want to create like really random colored images. So I didn't want to have like a purple pea or a black watermelon or something like that. I wanted to keep it within the same colors that you would find in real life. Although you never know, we might have purple peas. And I did come across a yellow watermelon, which isn't as sweet as the red watermelon. So that was kind of interesting. Anyway, moving on to the bananas. So the bananas have followed the same design idea. I decided to keep it, I didn't want to, if you look at the inside of a banana, it's kind of yellow, but it's kind of white as well. And I didn't want to do white, so I went with this really light yellow that I've got, and made it a bit more cartoonish, but it's still within the realms of being a bit realistic. And then just sort of filled in the middle with that, and then went with a darker color for the outside. And you'll notice here I purposely skipped some of the outside bananas, and that's because I know that they're going to get chopped off anyway. And if there's a little bit of a banana that's not filled in, it's not the end of the world. It's still got the image there, and it would be on the very edge of my nail. So the chances of it even being noticed by anyone is pretty unlikely. So I guess what my point of saying here is, don't be too rigid with this. Focus on the center, and the edges you can let go a little bit and not be so constrained and restrictive of how you're actually creating it. Have a little bit of fun with it, and enjoy yourself. It's not meant to be too serious. So I just use the dadding technique, and that's pretty much the bananas. Once you're ready and you're happy with all your designs, start adding your clear polish. You can stagger this a little bit so that as you add it to your nails, it kind of dries a little bit more, and it will mean that everything's not dry at once. The advantage of that is if the polish or the clear ends up being too dry, it can be hard to actually stick it onto your nail. You'll see me struggle with that a little bit in this video because it did dry a little bit too much. But there's techniques around that, so adding a top coat and then sort of adding the image on top of that once it's sort of nearly dry, and also adding a top coat over the top generally sort of seals it down. And that's the second technique, is what I ended up using, so you'll see that in a moment. In terms of cleanup, there's two things that you can do. One is to use some nail scissors. I do that for the bigger ones. Just be really careful that you don't cut yourself. So take it easy. And then the second one is to use a brush. I just use a cheap makeup brush that's used for eyeshadow, I think. And just puts that into some nail polish remover. And you can, if you're using the cheap ones, it doesn't matter that they get destroyed. And they actually last a fair while. I bought some like on Christmas clearance a little while ago, and I'm still on the same brush, even though I've got sort of a few others sitting there that came with the pack. So you just sort of keep plopping along, and this is probably the best part, is when you see them lifting up. If your images aren't lifting up and they're still sort of sticking and they still look like they're wet, just gently place it back down on the mat, wait a couple more minutes and come back and see if it's dry. It's generally very close to being ready. If it's starting to lift, it just needs that little bit longer. If you try and lift it up while it's still wet and it's still sticking to the mat, no matter what you do, it will get damaged. So just stop and put it back down onto the mat. So I ended up adding the fruit on one hand and the veg on one hand. I thought it'd be kind of fun to have that contrast, and just kept sort of applying the images. And then once I was ready, I then added my top coat. And this is where you'll see where I did a little bit of repair using my tweezers. So I just put the top coat over the top of the images, and as for some of them a little bit underneath as well where they were really lifting, and then just use my tweezers just on the edges of the image, just to sort of press it down and make sure that it really stuck down. There's one or two I had to go back and fix up, but most of them, particularly the smaller ones, are a lot easier to deal with. The bigger ones are a little bit more challenging. But the top coat, it generally fixes everything. Just be careful not to smudge it, and use the beading technique that I describe in my blog post, where you use a drop of the polish rather than just stroking it on like you would with normal nail polish. And so there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments, do you have any tips for reverse stamping or nail stamping that you'd love to share with others, or any other thoughts about this video? Anyway, comment down below, and until next time, thank you so much for watching. Bye!